I was asked to research about decisiveness and confidence. So what exactly is being decisive or being confident? Anyone, hands? Anyone? Simple definition.
So I would say that decisiveness is being able to take a decision easily and with surety, and confidence is being sure of yourself and what you're going to do.
Yeah, basically. The dictionary definition I found was being decisive is to be able to make choices or decisions quickly and confidently. And the definition of confidence is just belief in oneself and one's powers or abilities, self-confidence, self-assurance, self-reliance. This is nothing but realizing that we are divinity, but I'll get into that topic later. So what's the relationship between decisiveness and confidence? Well, what I figured out was, confidence is the result of being decisive. When you're decisive, you're confident. And if you're not confident, then you're not decisive. They act in a symbiotic relationship. And my task today is to figure out 10 tips to be decisive and confident. And through this typing 10 tips, what I found was, in reality, there's only one tip, and that's to listen to your conscience. But I know how arbitrary and challenging that is, so I've decided to break it down. And when we're able to make decisions, whether they're right or wrong, if we're able to learn from those mistakes, then we will be able to gain trust in ourselves and gain self-confidence. And it's very easy to, if you make a wrong decision, we're like, okay, I cannot make decisions anymore, they're all going to be wrong, I'm afraid of myself. But that's the most important part. You should not give up just because of one decision going wrong. We should realize that mistake and correct it. And for other decisions, we should take that lesson. And God cares more about whether you learned from the mistake or not, and what you learned from the mistake. Making a mistake, everyone makes mistakes. We're all not perfect. If we were perfect, then we'd become liberated. But because we're not perfect, we all make mistakes. And so gaining confidence is the path to perfection or liberation. And one part of being confident is basically stepping out of a glass box, letting go of all your inhibitions or doubt that builds up inside of you, and deciding when and how to break out is the decisive factor. So I have 10 tips for us to help us become more confident and decisive. And number one is to accept yourself for who you are. Don't compare yourself with others, or don't think you're better than others, or belittle yourself, because we're all divinity, but there's some originality within us that we have to decide for ourselves. And there's a nice quote for this: self-confidence is the most attractive quality a person can have. How can anyone see how great you are if you can't see it yourself? I mean, not everybody doesn't have to see how great you are, but we have to realize ourselves, the divinity within us, that we are nothing but divinity. Second is this is in very realistic, practical terms, but to know your stuff. It's that, whether it's common sense or basic knowledge. For example, in school, there's a topic, the teacher brings up a topic, and it's about to talk about the current president of the United States. And you can go up saying, okay, I'm going to speak up and be confident and talk about whatever the topic is. But if you stand up and talk about the former President Bush, I don't think that's a very effective way to gain confidence. So just in practical, realistic terms, just know your stuff. The knowledge, basic knowledge, common sense. It helps in this world, materialistic way. Next is, we learned about this in Bhavana, but it's the remote. You have to own your remote. Another quote is, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And that consent is your remote. No one can make you feel anything without you being able to feel it yourself. We always say, sometimes we say, oh, she made me do that, she made me feel like that. But in reality, it's us making us feel like that ourselves. And so we have to gain that confidence in ourselves that, whatever I do, we have to take responsibility for our actions or however we feel. And second, next, it's to, gaining confidence. It could be this like spontaneous moment where you're just like, okay, I'm confident. But for me, I guess I would see it as a process or a gradual, you gain confidence over time. And so for that, it's helpful to set goals or limits. Like in Balikas, we tried to write down goals and say, okay, these will help us. And so like that, we should also set small goals, like whether it's like doing something new today or speaking up or whatever goal, personal goal you have, just write it down and follow it, and eventually over time you will gain that confidence. Also, it's now or never. If you're not going to take up the action to be confident or to decide now, it's never going to happen. And the quote is, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. So we should get started in that path to gain confidence, otherwise it's never going to happen. And I also talked about this before, but not to give up. If you make a mistake or if you make a decision and it turns out to be not the best, it's not the best to give up. You won't gain anything from that. Another quote is, it's easier to go down a hill than up, but the view is much better at the top. That top is the confidence, and the hill is that struggle. And also, when I was talking about goals and limits, I said write it down, right? You should write it down. We should write it down and gain that clarity. Uncle said in class that writing it down helps us gain that clarity of thought. And so we should be able to ourselves know what exactly we want to do, what exactly we want to get out of anything. And we just write it down and have that clarity. Because a lack of clarity puts brakes on any journey. This journey to confidence will stop if we don't have clarity. And last but not least, you're nothing but divinity. And that's the most important thing to keep in mind, because we are all divine and we know that Swami will act through us. So why should we be afraid of doing anything if it's all Swami, right? And also, I personally struggled through this very recently, and what I've learned is that no matter how hard you want to do something, or you want to fix something, or you want to change something, at the end of the day, the result is not in our hands. It's all up to Swami, it's all up to God to decide what's right and what's wrong. And that confidence is that trust in God that He knows what He's doing. And we all know about the infinite amount of love that Swami has for us. And I can, without a doubt, positively say that Swami will only do what is right for us. Swami will only do anything that will help us become better. And it's our responsibility to take that lesson and to grab that knowledge that Swami has given us, this whole world He's built for us to learn that we are nothing but divinity, and to have trust in God that He knows what He's doing. And I think that's the most important part of being confident, is to have that trust in Swami, have that trust in ourselves, that whatever happens is for the best, and learn from the mistakes and just go with the flow, I guess.